Yes, yes.
Hello and good evening. The South Caribbean Conference is pleased to present the 10th installment of our Surviving the Crisis series. This evening's presentation is entitled Protecting Your Mental Health with Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Wherever you're in the world you are joining us from, we'd like to wish you a very special welcome. And we pray that you are healthy, happy, and doing very well. Now, this evening's program is going to be brought to us by Dr. Edward Clark, who is the Dean of the School of Social Sciences at the University of the Southern Caribbean. Dr. Clark was educated in England. He works in Trinidad and currently resides in South Africa, truly an international man. He's the founding and current Dean of the School of Social Sciences, a professor of social psychology, a cognitive behavioral therapist working at the University of the Southern Caribbean. He's qualified in the areas of counseling, sociology, psychology, international relations, and business management. He was educated at the University of London, Surrey, and Oxford Brookes in the United Kingdom. He has lived and worked in many South African countries, including Lesotho, where he was a senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Roma in Lesotho, in Swaziland, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Angola. In addition to his experience in the African continent, Dr. Clark has been included as a part-time research consultant for the WHO, UNICEF, UNFPA, and USAID. He's very committed to the academic development of the University of the Southern Caribbean and very much enjoys being active in church. Dr. Clark, we wish you a good evening and welcome to our series.
To make a presentation, I appreciate it very much, and we're going to have some fun today.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Clark, before we begin, could you open us with a word of prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we lift our voice in praise and thanksgiving to you. We thank you that we are healthy and that you've protected our families from this COVID pandemic that has ravaged the globe, and with so many people who have lost their lives and families and mourning. So we give you praise and thanks. As we are about to begin the session, we ask you to eliminate all technical challenges so that we can have a smooth, uninterrupted session. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Amen. So for our listening and viewing public, Dr. Clark will now commence his presentation. And after he has ended, we will be inviting questions from the audience. So please take notes as Dr. Clark continues his presentation, save them up for the end, and we'll be answering as many of those questions live on the program. Dr. Clark, we turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so today we are going to talk a bit about how we can protect ourselves with the use of cognitive behavioral therapy. And I want to begin by saying there's a text in the Bible, Proverbs 23:7, that interests me a lot. It says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." I want to say that thoughts and emotions have a profound effect on each other. Thoughts trigger emotions, And emotions can reinforce thoughts. Now, here you see some of the four, these are the four primary emotions that we all experience. And we might think that we have many emotions, but emotions are normally divided into primary emotions and secondary emotions. And the four primary emotions we see here are anger, sadness, fear, and a bit of joy. And these are the four main emotions. Of course, we have many other frustrations and grief. We have lots of other secondary emotions, but these are the four primary emotions that we all experience. Now, there's a general acceptance that COVID 19 has had a detrimental effect on our mental health. So, the main psychological impact to date is elevated rates of stress or anxiety, especially among certain groups, such as older persons, care providers, and people with underlying health conditions, what the technicians call comorbid conditions. But as new measures and the impacts are introduced, especially stay at home, physical distancing, these have had a tremendous impact on the usual activities that we experience in our lives, our everyday lives. You know, we all have routines that we follow every day. And now, social physical distancing, staying at home, has created a rather unusual situation for us. So, what we have had then, we've had reported levels of loneliness, depression, domestic abuse, harmful alcohol consumptions, drug use, and suicide ideation, and many challenging psychological conditions. However, every day when we open our televisions or our radios, we can't escape hearing about the number of people that have died, or the number of people who are unemployed, or the number of people who have been infected. So to date, there are 5.9 million persons have been infected, sorry, by COVID. And I'm sure in the next 3, 4 months, that number will increase. And we have had over 362 deaths. Now, I just want to put it in perspective, and 362 deaths is equivalent to all the inhabitants in Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the US Virgin Islands. And I say to myself, that is crazy. Can you imagine if what that would have been like if it had come to the Caribbean and we had experienced such a calamity? But what can we do about it? How can we protect ourselves? Those are thoughts that stream through, pop into our minds and pop out of our minds and pop back in our minds. It's 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 a recurrent decimal in the way we think. Am I doing the right thing? What else can I do? What else should I be doing? These are some of the questions that we keep asking ourselves. Now, in the absence of consistent and reliable information about coronavirus, there's much anxiety everywhere. And fear and anxiety are two of the dominant emotional expressions that our body or thoughts of give out as a result of our thinking about the coronavirus. However, we need to understand that in situations of crisis, that it is quite normal for people to be worried and anxious. And that's because so much of what goes on in a crisis is unknown to the individuals who are in the crisis. So there's a lack of predictability and there's a lack of control. And these two factors are the ones that drive the stress and create the anxiety. So there's much that we do not know about COVID. So it's an understandable and normal response to feel concerned, anxious, and worried about how it's going to impact us and our families. Now, the World Health Organization put out an info card, and it says when faced in a situation such as COVID 19, it is normal to experience feelings of tension, being unable to focus, and having racing thoughts. And these are all signs of stress. And we need to recognize these signs. And when we feel stress, we need to take the necessary measures to alleviate that. And one of the things that we can do is we can try to calm or breathe in. We can go and get some water and sip the water. We can pick up a book, the Bible, and we can read it. We can just go out in the garden if we have gardens, or we can just step out and just feel the warmth of the breeze. We can do many things just to alleviate that feeling of stress that we are likely to experience. But one of the things about stress, and especially when the stress comes in a crisis like we're facing, is that there is a heightened feeling of uncertainty. When is COVID going to go away? When is it going to stop? It's an important observation that I've made recently, that uncertainty creates a desire for control in all of us. It's almost like part of our humanness. When we are uncertain, we want to hold on to something that is certain. So while we should modify our behaviors to take control of what we can, it is equally important to modify our thoughts around what we cannot control. So uncertainty rules. Uncertainty rules. And, as I move around, I was out today in the market, and I saw some people with masks, some without masks. Of course, you can't get into the market unless you carry a mask. But we can see that even in the marketplace, there are some people who took off their masks once it came in. That we know what we should do, but we are not sure whether we are able to do it. It doesn't fit very well with us. So there's always this feeling of uncertainty. We are at the crossroads. And when I looked at the news today on the opening up of the facilities in England, we had, you saw people at the beach in their hundreds, all mingling, no social distancing, uncertainty. Some people still have masks, others don't have masks. So uncertainty is one of the dominant feelings that we experience. Now, if we knew for sure when the virus would die out, we'd feel better. We'll have a timeline. We say, okay, come December, that will be the end of COVID. Not knowing when it's going to die out or if it's going to die out produces uncertainty. And when we experience uncertainty, we often try to reduce our discomfort by trying to take control. But there's not much more we can do but shelter at home, in our limited space, in our exposure to people who we don't normally spend a significant amount of time at home, because normally in an average day, dad goes to work, moms goes to work, the children go off to school, and we are not all together in the home at the same time. Now, we have everyone at home, and that creates an awful lot of tension. So, most of us cannot reduce our risk to zero, but we still need to go out for groceries and supplies. Some of us still need to go to work. So it's important that we begin to accept that we cannot have zero control. However much we might want it, we know that we cannot have it. So what we have to do is to look at what can we control. But if you demand certainty that you or your family won't contract the virus, you're likely to be highly anxious because absolute certainty, as I just stated, isn't possible. On the other hand, you can reduce your anxiety by accepting the fact that taking the reasonable precautions that the CDC advises may be the most you can do. What you do to feel healthy each day is something you can control. So you need to take control of the things that you can control and somehow try to forget the things. Accept that there are things you can control. So there are really three, I put three areas of our activity that we can begin to feel some sense of control. First of all, as Christians, we need to let go, give it to God, and remain trusting that He's going to protect us, come what may, and that He is going to see us through this crisis. That's the first thing. And you will be amazed what that does to you once you can just accept that I don't have control. I am leaving it onto God, higher power who has control, and whatever the case, whatever happens, I'm going to give it up to Him. Just letting go. But very often we don't let go. We let go of some things, but we hold on to others. There's also something that we can do, which I haven't heard a lot about in the discussion that we hear around COVID, and that is about improving our immune system. And we can take such vitamins as C, D, K, and B. And for me, I think that's really very important. And especially for older persons, I think that we need to be proactive in building our immune systems. Because if our immune systems are pretty well fortified, we will be able to have some resistance. We will have some resistance to all the viruses, most of the viruses that we experience. I mean, we're going into the flu season, and we will be able to withstand the flu season, and who knows, the COVID. But improving our immune system is very important, and I think it needs to get much more promo than it does at the moment. And then lastly, we need to change the way we think about COVID. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And then we're going to talk about how we can change the way we think about COVID. And we do that with the help of CBT. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. So, and it deals with our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior, and the way that we can remove unhelpful negative thoughts and anxious feelings about COVID and take control of our mental health. So, what is CBT? And I want to just give you a clip here, if I could find it. Okay. Let's see if we can find it. All right, it's going to take some time to find that because so let's go on. We'll deal with this another time. But I'm just going to focus on taking control of your health, and it's incumbent on all of us to take personal responsibility for our health. No one is going to be responsible for your health but you. And I think that's something that we need to take on board quite seriously and understand that our health is very, very critical at this point in time. Now, in CBT, because I'm just not able to bring up that video at the moment, but CBT deals with three critical areas of our being: our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. And our thoughts influence our feelings, and our feelings influence our behavior, and our feelings influence our thoughts, and our thoughts influence our feelings. So there's a forward and backward relationship between thoughts and feelings. There's a relationship between behavior and feelings, and there's a relationship between behavior and thoughts. We're going to talk about that a bit later. So when we have behaviors, underlying these behaviors, we have negative thoughts and painful emotions. And CBT tells us that excessive attempts to control are normally associated with such thoughts as, I am vulnerable. And let's be honest, we all feel vulnerable at this time. We all feel vulnerable. And we wash our hands feverishly, we wash the fruit, we do all of those things. And guess what? In spite of everything we do, we still somehow don't always get it right. I watched a program on TV in which this reporter wanted to show that in spite of what we do, we still mess up. And what he did is that he sanitized this customer's hand, and he allowed her to go into her home and to have lunch with her family and friends. And then he used an ultraviolet light, and he found that she had contaminated everyone in her household with the dye that he had sprayed on her hands, in spite of the fact that her hands were supposed to be 99.9% clean, as Lysol tells us. So we are all vulnerable, and the best we do is all that we can do, and the rest we just need to leave it to Mother Nature. So when we think that we are vulnerable, when we think that we are unprepared, we create stress in our bodies. And when thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are aligned in this way, there is a cycle, as I explained, where thoughts influence feelings, and feelings influence thoughts, and feelings influence the behavior, and behavior influence thoughts, and thoughts influence behavior. So there's a danger that whatever we do, it is inadequate. And this is an underlying explanation for why trying to gain control only leads individuals to feel less in control. So, maintaining control over your routines is one major thing you can do to help boost both your physical and mental health, which is really very, very important. So, you get up in the morning, make sure you get out of your pajamas, you put on your clothes, and you have a schedule, and you stick as best you can to that schedule. But if you get up 9 o'clock, 9:30, because you're not going anywhere, and you just hang around with your pajamas on, and then you have breakfast at 11 o'clock or 10:30, and you just wander around aimlessly in the home, there is going to be a high likelihood that you're going to get bored. You're going to get fed up. You're going to get irritable. You're going to have no meaning to that day. Just imagine doing that for 2 months. It's just too much for the mind to deal with. So we need to have a schedule of activities and to stick to that schedule as best we can. And if we're living with our husbands or partners or children, then it's even more imperative that we have a schedule. Sorry about that moving. All right. So, and that helps us because we have meaning to our day. And when we have meaning to our day, we can feel the day seems to go faster. It doesn't seem to be so boring. It doesn't seem to be like, what have I done for the day? You know what it feels like when you come at the end of the day and you say, like, what did I do? You can't remember anything you've done, but you know you've been up all day, but you can't put your hand on something you've done. We don't want to be in that mental frame of mind. You want to be able to reflect on something that you have done with your day. The other thing we need to do is to change our unhelpful thoughts and take a balanced perspective. Now, the thing about unhelpful thoughts is that you don't have to think negative thoughts, they just seem to come automatically to us. So, we are always having to balance the negative thoughts by finding thoughts that are more enhancing and uplifting. Now, stressful times, and that's what we are going through across the world. Stressful time often leads people to engage in unhelpful thinking. So, focusing on the negative thoughts only makes situations worse. And we don't want to make our current situations worse. We want to change the way we think. We want to have a different perspective on whatever is happening to us. So, for instance, some persons have lost their jobs, some persons are on furlough, some persons are working from home, some persons have had salary cuts, some persons have convinced that they're unemployed. They don't know what the future is. They don't know whether they're going to go back to the same job. So there's a high degree of uncertainty that occupies our minds. And what I'm saying is this, that we need to try to change the way we think about the situation we are in. Now, this might seem too simple to be true, but if you can change the way you think about your situations, you will change the way you feel about the situation, right? Because, as we know, God has never given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power and love and self discipline. And therefore, it's important for us to try our utmost to dissipate the fear and the anxiety, the uncertainty that comes to us on a daily basis about what our future is going to be. So, we feel stress. And guess what? Stress brings on anxiety, stress brings on depression, depression creates a serious mental health challenge, and then we are unable to function. We are unable to add value to our home. We are unable to make decisions. So, to reduce stress, we need to begin to think about the things that happen to us, to have a different perspective of the things that happen to us, so that we can take control of our mental health. Now, I read a very interesting statement, and I want to share this with you. And I hope you don't feel worse when you read the statement. Mike Ryan, who is the World Health Organization Emergencies Director, he was being interviewed and he said, the coronavirus may never go away. Populations would have to learn to live with coronavirus. What a realization. Can you imagine COVID here to stay? How does that make you feel? I'm sure you're not feeling comfortable. To hear a prominent person of the World Health Organization saying to us that COVID is likely to be here to stay and we have to get accustomed to it. So the thoughts running through your mind is, what, do I have to wear my mask all the time? How am I going to travel? What am I going to do? Currently, there are over 100 laboratories and universities working around the clock to develop a vaccine against the SARS-2 virus. And they're also working on COVID-19 virus. So you can just imagine what's happening all over the world. That the scientists are trying their utmost to find some sort of vaccine to give us some kind of hope of physical and emotional health. So the World Health Organization insists that the virus may never be wiped away entirely. It would become just another epidemic virus in our communities, and it might never go away. And when I read that, I was not particularly chuffed, I must tell you. I just said to myself, wow. So the sooner I get accustomed to accepting that COVID is likely to be here for the foreseeable future, the better I can begin to live my life with meaning and not to allow the negative thoughts to occupy my mind. When we tend to believe that emotions are just part of us and can't be changed. But research, however, has established that emotions are malleable. They can be changed. And there are two critical areas or two critical processes that we can adopt in changing the way we think. The first one is called cognitive restructuring, and the second one is reframing. They're, they're mainly the same. It's about changing our thinking, but there are the slight differences in the process. The first thing is we need to calm ourselves. Calm ourselves. We need to identify the situation. And when we look at the situation, not to view the situation as negative, but to view COVID 19 as something that we don't have control over and that everyone is experiencing the same thing. We need to be thankful that we are not ill. We need to be thankful that our families are healthy and safe. So we need to infuse our minds with positive thoughts. So rather than looking at the prospect of not getting control, we need to be grateful and thankful that to date we have been able to overcome, and by the help of the Almighty, we have not been infected. And then we need to analyze, understand what is it about me that's been affected. Is it that I'm feeling depressed and I don't want to get out of bed? Is it that I'm anxious? Is it that I'm worried about something that I don't have control over? We need to check out what it is that we are worried about. And that's one of the ways that we can begin to interrogate our thoughts. Because we need to find out whether the thoughts we have are negative, whether they are neutral, or whether they are positive. And if we think they're negative, we need to find, is there any supporting evidence that this is the case? Now, to date, we have had 9 deaths as a result of COVID. And for that, we have to be eternally grateful. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you've read in the newspaper where we got international recognition as one of those countries that has applied the CDC regulations, and we have had an excellent outcome from this COVID. So we need to take that information, change our perspective about what's happening, and not look at our situation as entirely negative and unhelpful. So let's look at the thinking feeling connection. People often think that the feelings that we experience are caused by external events, situations, and the actions of others. This is very interesting. But it is what we think about the things that happen that really determines how we feel. For example, we may hear ourselves say, my boss made me so nervous today. My partner made me so angry. This trip down south made me feel so relaxed. or I'm depressed because I didn't get the job I wanted. What is the assumption underlying these statements? That someone or something other than ourselves was directly determining the feelings we experience. Listen to that. We always blame someone for the feelings that we experience. It's got nothing to do with us. And you must remember that our emotions are experienced by choice. We choose how to feel about a situation. It would take me some time to answer that in its entirety, but we can deal with that when we have the questions. Specifically, it's our thoughts and our beliefs about the situation. It's our thoughts and our beliefs about the situation or person that makes us feel and respond the way we do. Now, all of us listening today, all of us living, we have what we call core beliefs. And these core beliefs are formed due our nurturing period as children. We have these core beliefs. And with these core beliefs come assumptions. And these assumptions are really important. And we use these assumptions based on our core beliefs to influence how we think about many, many things in our present life situations. So, thoughts come automatically to us, and we are often not conscious of how or what we are thinking. And as I said earlier, there are three kinds of automatic thoughts: neutral, positive, and negative. And here we have uh, a diagram of Aaron Beck, who is the founder, um, creator of the cognitive behavior theory model. And cognitive behavior therapy is the leading psychotherapeutic intervention in the relief of most mental illnesses, except psychoses. But here we are, and we see the relationship. This diagram shows us the relationship between our thoughts, because what we think affects how we feel and act. And you see also that how we feel affects how we think and act. And the same thing happens with our behavior. So we might not even think that we have thought, but we might feel. And when we have an emotional sensation, we function on that emotion. We go from emotions to behaviors. And we never stop to think that preceding that emotion was a thought. And if you want to change the behavior that you are displaying, and some persons do have negative behaviors and that we don't like, and you want them to change that behavior. Now, to change that behavior, you need to change the feeling. And to change the feeling, you need to change the thoughts. So, trying to change behaviors without changing thoughts is likely to be a futile exercise. So it's our thoughts and our beliefs about the situation or person that makes us feel and respond the way we do. So let me skip that one. So what really makes us feel and respond the way we do is often not the situation or the words and actions of another person, but how we perceive that situation or that person's actions. So it's how we think about COVID that really influences how we feel about COVID. It is our thoughts and our beliefs about an event, the pandemic, that significantly influence our emotions and our action. So let me give you an example. I'm sure you remembered that in February, when we heard about COVID, everyone rushed off to Price Smart. And we got to Price Smart, and I tell you, I went there with a friend, and we couldn't even get in the door. And I've never seen such queues price smart. In a jiffy, the racks were emptied of toilet paper, tissue paper, cooking oil, tin foods. Why did we do that? We did that because something in our thoughts, in our mind, says to us, wow, things are going to be bad. There's going to be a shortage of food. There's going to be rationing. We are not going to be able to get, so we bought and we bought and we bought. But guess what? From that time until now, the food shops are still open. So what caused that? Anxiety. Anxiety. Panic. And how did those anxiety started with our thoughts? What we thought would happen, but didn't. Praise the Lord, it didn't happen. So in cognitive restructuring, we see that the way we change our minds about a situation would influence the way we feel about that situation. So cognitive restructuring is an effective intervention and a core part of CBT. Because CBT is one of the most effective psychological treatments for common problems like depression, anxiety states, and most of the neuroses that we experience. So we can use CBT to reduce our fears, conquer our overwhelmed feelings, change our thinking, and act in meaningful ways. Now, I said that we had two processes. The first one was cognitive restructuring. The second one is reframing. Reframing. So to survive this crisis and come out of it in a better shape, we must learn to take better care of ourselves and of each other. We must learn the 3 R's of anxiety management. Reframing is the basic skill of anxiety management. It's essential. We must start by understanding our fears and knowing where they come from. Then we must reframe that understanding in a more functional way. All our worst fears are related to 3 core agenda. Anxiety for ourselves, our future, and our world. This cognitive triad described by Aaron Beck is a summary of the core concerns of every human being. Our concern about ourselves, our concern about our future, and our concern about the world in which we live. But remember, all fears are subjective. We can change them. If we are the originators of our anxiety, then we should be able to do something about them. So at times of stress, it is natural that we fear for our own safety, we fear for our future, and we fear for the survival of our environment. Our environment includes our personal environment, your home environment, as well as the environment of your extended family, as well as the environment of the wider community that we live in. So, the 3 R's, we need to reframe our worries. Yes, some persons are unemployed. Yes, we are worried about or concerned about the fact that we don't have a job. Yes, we are concerned about how are we going to manage our families if we don't have a job. That is reality. Let me put that in the frame. That is reality. But having dealt with realities, what are we going to do? Are we just going to stay at home and be comatose? Are we going to stay at home and be anxious about it? No. We have to do something about it. We have to get out there, try and get a job. You might not get the job you want, but try and get a job. So we have to look at our situation and reframe the way we think about our worries. We have to believe that this too shall pass. But I've just said that COVID might not pass. It might be here. So if it's not going to pass, we just have to accept it and live with it and live through it and out of it. And we need to also build resilience. Now, our values are very important. So, by reframing our anxieties into values, we move our anxiety into better space. With awareness, we can make better plans to support and defend the things we value. Our awareness moves us into more constructive action. Planned action is the antithesis of panic. So, placing our worries with positive values, this means putting a greater value on ourselves, a greater value on our future, and a greater value on our world, and understanding that it is not going to be this way forever. We need to then think about how we are going to change the present situation so that we can make it better. So we had reframing, now we come to recovery. So to recover from COVID-19, we need to believe in recovery. This belief is faith in our capacity as people, as a nation, and as a species to overcome not only the rising tide of zoonoses, that is, infections arising from other mammalian species and transferred into human beings, but many other challenges arising in our modern world. Belief in recovery is essential for survival. Without this belief, our anxiety will rise and rise and rise, and we would end up in a state of panic. Recovery is a process enabled by connecting people with hope, respecting their identity, giving them meaning, and empower them to work to this goal. So we need in our understanding our relationship, that when we think about COVID, that if I get ill, I will recover. If I get ill, I will recover. Think across the world how many persons have been infected and they have recovered. Millions. So it's not a death sentence. And we're learning more and more about the virus. And as we learn more and more, our interventions, our processes will improve. And therefore, recovery is greatly enhanced as a result of that. But we need to be resilient. Resilient is the ability to bounce back after a crisis. After COVID-19, we can be resilient. We will not be weakened. We will not be a weakened nation if we prepare for the next crisis and the next opportunity. Individual health is dependent on public health. And if you could remember, the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was lying in intensive care, and he was much sicker than we assumed. We only realized what a serious situation he was in when he came out and relieved that it was touch and go. And he recovered. He recovered. He recovered from that almost what we would say is very serious situation. He recovered. He's functioning. He's active, and he is now demonstrating resilience in the way that he is going about the fact that he has to open up the country. So the country is gradually opening up, and we are pleased to see that here in Trinidad, but we are gradually opening up because we can't remain in this cloistered, quarantine, isolated state. We have to come out because COVID is here to stay. Individual health is dependent on public health. None of us can be well alone. We depend on each other for our health. And that's why we wear masks. We wear masks because by protecting you and you protecting me, we are all protected. And finally, there is no public health without mental health. The other contagion is anxiety, and we don't want to be in that situation. We need to be like a light bulb. And I thought it was so fitting that when you look across the Caribbean and you see how well the Caribbean countries have managed the crisis, we stand out in the world as being able to resist the devastating effect on COVID. And that has been recognized across the world. Just as we're not conscious of the way we walk and how we drive a car, we are often not aware of our thinking. Some of our thinking is habitual, that is, it's automatic. And just like driving, when things are automatic, we might not be conscious of them. All of the time, our brains are turning over thoughts and ideas. However, we are not consciously aware of most of them because it happens relatively fast and we are not accustomed to slowing them down. So, what we need to do, we need to begin to be more self aware of our thoughts. We need to be more self aware that negative thoughts have negative feelings, and negative feelings produce distorted actions. We don't want to be like that. So, in concluding, I want to say that if you can change your thinking, you can change your feeling, which will change your behavior, and you will begin to impact your life positively because COVID is here. We can't wait for it to go away. We have to live with it and live through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. That was a very intense presentation, and we're quite thankful for the guidance on reframing our thoughts, on thinking differently. I found it very, very refreshing, actually, because I think it provides helpful, practical steps that people can implement in their lives. So we're going to look at the questions that have come in online at this time. And I saw someone asked, in the area of outbreaks, which one impacts an individual first? Psychological or physical?
Well, it depends on what the outbreak is. You did say outbreak, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it depends on what the outbreak is. Now, if we think, and it depends on, it depends on what the crisis is that we're facing. But whenever we face a crisis, it could be, okay, it could be as, I was going to say as little, but then if I say that or I say as simple, I'm going to be making value judgment. Because for each person, when they say they're experiencing a crisis, they're experiencing a crisis. Who are we to say they're not experiencing a crisis? It's a very subjective statement. But when we talk about a national crisis, that's a different thing. But so let's think about personal crises, and then we talk about national crises. So when we say something is a crisis, we must remember that we begin to think that this particular incident, situation, or event has considerable import for our well being, our survival, or the maintenance of some status or situation that we're in. So, if you are the only breadwinner in a house and you lose your job, you can say that is a crisis. That you can interpret that as a crisis if you wanted to, but that's a subjective perspective. And if you, as soon as you say it's a crisis, the first thing is going to happen. Crisis begins by bringing on concern. Listen to the word concern. Concern means that we are beginning to engage our thoughts about what am I going to do? What am I going to do? That's the first thing. What am I going to do? How am I going to manage? Thoughts. What am I going to do? How am I going to manage? How am I going to meet my bills? How am I going to do all of those things? That's the thoughts. Those are the thoughts that come to our minds. Now, how we think, how we then, the next thing we go to is how do we deal with those thoughts? Do we feel hopeless, helpless, uh, or do we start thinking, well, okay, I need to do something? So the first thing that comes to us is the psychological, because that because when something happens, our thoughts generate ideas. Okay, if it's a national situation, the same thing. I mean, our thoughts. But because our thoughts and our feelings are so closely entwined that we might not think about the situation first, we might get a feeling about it. We might just feel anxious. But when we feel anxious, we then keep on feeling worse, you know. But we don't realize that the thing that's generating, energizing those feelings are negative thoughts. So that is what happens.
I see.
So psychological,
So it's usually the psychological will impact you first.
yes, it hits you first because it involves your thinking.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, if just imagine you go to the doctor and he says, well, look, your gallbladder is in a state. We have to remove your gallbladder. I mean, you're gonna start thinking, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Do I have the money to pay? How long will it take? If I take out my gallbladder, will I still be able to do A, B, C, D? You know, you're gonna have thoughts. You're going to have
Right.
thoughts. You're going to have psychological
Now,
thoughts.
now, now, Dr. Clark,
Yes, sir.
I'm seeing here another question that I think is leading into what you were just saying, and it's a question that struck me immediately as you spoke to it. So it's come up on the screen, and the question is, how can you control your automatic thoughts?
Hmm. Okay. So we are saying from the get go that we have automatic thoughts, but our automatic thoughts normally has a basis in our core beliefs. Now I can't go into core beliefs because that will. So let me give you an idea about core beliefs. All of us, we grow up in our families, and our parents teach us certain things, and and those things become our defining ways of thinking. So, for instance, all right. So let me give you an example. So I grew up. I like to put myself on the line here, where my parents said fairness is very important. You must be fair. There's five of us, five guys. So my mom says, no, this is not fair. Everything must be done in a fair way. So I've grown up with fairness being a dominant characteristic of myself. But that characteristic has its basis on how my mom trained us. So whether I am at USC, whether I am at CUC, it doesn't matter where I am. I like things to be done in a fair way. If it's not done fairly, or I think that someone is being um, discriminated to another one's detriment, it's going to hit me, and I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to respond to that. So we all have thoughts. Now, so the way we have been brought up, the homes that we've been brought up in, what we have learned in our upbringing influences the way we think. I could give you many, many, many examples. And you see people behave in certain ways. Why doesn't he stop that behavior? Why stop that behavior? Just like that. Because he grew up thinking, um, this is the way it is. I was reviewing a thesis for an examination, and we were looking at recidivism in Trinidad. You know, and someone is has been committing crimes. You go in, you come out. You go in, you come out. But when you check, most of these people come from families that have negative thought processes about themselves. You know, I am from X community, so therefore I don't have a chance of getting any of the goodies in society because, you know, I am not one of those. So you grow up seeing people taking by force, taking illegally things. And you say to yourself, yeah, that's what it is. I mean, you know, that's how the way, you know, people, they always think that people from this neighborhood be like this. So what can you say? Even if we try our best to still think it, so we might as well do it and then let's struggle. Look, they're exploiting us, so let's exploit them. And then that's what drives the behavior. That thought drives the feelings, which drives the behavior. And because you think, you know, yeah, I'm entitled to that watch, I'm entitled to that cell phone. Why should he have that cell phone and not I am entitled to it? So then we relieve him of it, right? He can always get another one. He's got bucks. He won't even miss this. Oh, it's insured, so he'll get another one from the insurance company. So let me take it, you know? And mind you, that person might already have two cell phones, but he doesn't mind taking a third. So what is we need one we never stop to think like that. And that is why the children's court in Trinidad is moving away from incarcerating young boys and young women and sending them to institutions where they can learn them to self-regulate because putting people in confinement, locking them down, isn't helping them. You have to change the way they think. You and I, we have kids, I have grandkids, and if your child misbehaves in this parenting, it doesn't mean that he's not going to misbehave. You need to teach him how to regulate himself when you're not there. So when you're not there, he can do the right thing. To do the right thing, he has to be thinking that that thing is wrong. So I mustn't do it. You can't say I'm not doing it because daddy isn't watching. Because when daddy isn't watching, he do it. And you want him to do it whether daddy is not watching. So it has to be up here.
So, Dr. Clark, you're pointing to the need to change core beliefs in order to change automatic thoughts.
Yes,
Um,
core beliefs are slightly more difficult to change than automatic thoughts because you can change automatic thoughts by getting people to think, like I just said, okay, this thought you have about this situation, is it factual? Is it true? You know, it's like what we do call fact checking
yes.
that we do on the president. Is this factual? No, it's not factual. So what is the premise for this thought or this belief if it's not factual? There must be some other reason. And then when you scratch away the surface, you find that it's because they have always believed that this is how it should be. And
Mhm.
therefore, it doesn't matter what happens. This is it.
Yeah.
As I was telling someone, us as black people, we believe and and the thing about it is justified, so we believe it even more that when you're black, you're disadvantaged, you're not going to make it, things are against you, blah, 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 blah. Okay? We think like that. But let's say you and I thought like that all the time. What would become of us? We would be we would be stuck in the same swamp as those people who say, yeah, you know, black people, the truth, black people. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. Eh? It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen because we know it, that black people get treated X way or Y way. Okay? But in spite of that, for us at a personal level to move on, we have to say, okay, I know that that's it. And I know that I don't have a chance. And I know that this is that I need to, but I am still going to go. I am still going to go forward. I am still going to try and achieve. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
to rise above the our circumstance. And that's why we can say, so I was talking to me today, and this lady was saying to me, she, you know, she started to cry on the phone because she has some domestic issues. And she was saying, when I think where I come from and how I struggle, I say, hey, stop. Stop thinking about where you come from. Think where you are now and where you're going. Stop thinking about where you come from. Where you come from is history. You don't want to deal with that. Okay, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? So let's stop the negative thinking about how hard your life was and how difficult it was and how your mom was this and your dad was that. As a therapist, that's good for me to help to change your thinking. But that's all I'm going to use it for. But you need to go past that.
Now, Dr. Clark, I'm seeing an interesting question here, and it's one that has also been on my mind. And the person asks this: generally, can we change our faulty way of thinking ourselves? Or do we more often need the help of a cognitive behavior therapist or some other type of form of assistance?
Okay, there are self-help books that we can use. Okay, there are self-help books you can use, um, and you can do it yourself. The only reason why you need a therapist is based on the degree of the psychosocial problem you're experiencing. If you're depressed, if you're clinically depressed, then you can't help yourself. It's going to be okay, you can't. It's going to be difficult for you because you might know the techniques. Okay, that's it. But um, you can apply it. I can apply it to help ourselves if we want to. But it's because we don't always know the techniques of the process. It's like, I mean, you can cut your hand, you can have a big gash in your hand, and you can go online and learn how to suture your wound, right? Okay, you can do it right.
We should do that,
Well,
though.
you can Google it, you can find out how to do it. But it's going to be very painful for you to do it on your own. If you go to the doctor and he's suturing you, he has the skill, the competence, the know-how, you know, and he is likely to do it better, faster, and probably with less pain.
Yeah.
But you can do it yourself. It is just that professionally, he's trained how to do it, and therefore he knows the techniques.
Now, Dr. Clark has a follow up to that because I was wondering this myself. Um, in all of our lives, we will encounter situations where negative thoughts will come into your mind. Something will happen in school. Someone will tell you
Oh,
something.
yeah,
Okay.
all the
So,
time. Okay.
yes, isn't CBT something that we all utilize at some stage in our lives in order to go on? Isn't it something that we all utilize to varying degrees?
Yeah, we do it to a greater or lesser degree. All right. So, um, if you were to give me a situation, I could explain to you. But we all do it to a greater or lesser degree because we find ourselves in situations which may be an accident at birth, um, a situation. I have a friend of mine who's very ill, and he has been ill for the last 3 years. He is diagnosed with fourth stage cancer, and anyone getting that diagnosis would be petrified, mortified, and would want to give up because the possibility of dealing with that is very, very challenging up here.
Yeah.
So he decided, okay, I'm not ready. I have much more to my life. I want to be X. I want to be Y. I haven't fulfilled my objectives yet. I haven't fulfilled my goals. I need to fulfill those goals. I must. Okay, so he went for therapy, and the chemotherapy started to help. And then the doctor said to him, "My brother, there's nothing more we can do for you. There's nothing more." He said, "Okay, that's all right." He still continued his walking up and down the hills, right? I know, because I know him. He continued walking. He continued doing whatever he normally does. He
Right.
just doesn't do it to the same degree he does. He keeps a healthy mind. He doesn't engage in any conversation about death and dying.
Right.
He says, "I am here to live. I am here to make a contribution, and I am here to get the most out of life." 4 years, he's still alive.
Amen. Amen.
You know, and if you really understand the power of the mind, the power of the mind. I mean, it's just like actually you've seen some experiments where you put these artificial limbs and you connect it up to your brain, and your mind makes you move your hand. I don't know
Yes.
if you've seen all of that.
Yes. Yes.
Mind is powerful. It's
Yes.
just you don't apply it. And I'm sure that you and I and we have done that to a greater or lesser degree to overcome all difficulties in life. As most of us weren't born with silver spoons. We weren't, but we said we wanted to have taste silver spoons. We weren't born with them, but we had the appetite for tasting silver spoons. So we said, yes, I need a silver spoon in my mouth. So how do I get that? Okay, I can. This is the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somebody says, "Oh, you never achieve it with this, you with that." So, "Oh yeah, I'll show you." Boom. And you force through the negative thought that somebody gave you about yourself.
Yes.
You through it, and you infuse your mind with positive thoughts, and you come up and say, "Wow, look what happened." It wasn't. It's to do with the way you think. It's the way you think. We can do so much more with ourselves when we begin to think, change the way we think about our life situation. I could give you many personal experiences, but I wouldn't do that. Like this.
No, Dr. Clark, no, thank you very much because I think a lot of people need that self affirmation and to realize they
Yes,
need to get rid
yes,
of negative thoughts and fill their minds with positive thinking.
yes. You need to feel, there's a related discipline called emotional intelligence that goes with cognitive behavioral therapy. We need, and it's on the same premise, we need to think. But if you think about it another way, but we know that or religious discipline tells us to renew our minds. What does renewing your mind means? Changing it.
That's right.
You need to change it. That's the only way that you get redeemed, is that the Holy Spirit changes. So how can a man that is a murderer, or who is this, and how did they change?
That's right.
Yes,
Now,
something has to go on up there to get that person to change, have a different perspective,
yes.
have a different perspective on life. When you change the perspective on life, you change the way you feel about life, and therefore you use positive endeavors to achieve your goals.
Now, Dr. Clark, I'm seeing here someone wants to know about the statement that you referred to from the WHO representative, and they want to know whether that person would have created unnecessary stress by informing the public too early about how long COVID 19 would remain here with us. Did
No,
he
I
create
no.
unnecessary stress on the human race?
Now you see, that is perspective. That is perspective. You see, a statement is made, and someone has a different perspective than I would. So that
Right.
person thinks that that's possibly not right. You shouldn't have really said that. You need, okay, my perspective on the same statement is, yeah, we need to know that as soon as possible. Because I'm saying if we realize that it's here to stay, then just just get it. Get on living. Live with it. Deal with it. Not keep hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping, and then it doesn't materialize. Where does that leave us?
Right.
Does that leave us? It leaves us locked down here. You might be out of your house and you're going to work, but you're still locked down in your head. So how long can we remain locked down? How long? For how long? So I see it as freeing me to say, okay, so this thing is going to be around. So let me not fuss about it. Let me get on with living. Let me do what I have to do. Okay, I still wear my mask. I still live a go. I'm not gonna fuss about that. Let me give it to the Lord. He's the great protector. And let me go on and live. Okay? But if I am waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for it to disappear, and there's no evidence, none, that this is going to disappear in the air. We don't even know where it is in the first place. So where is it going to disappear to?
Yeah.
Is it going to disappear to? Yeah, is it in the ground? Is it in the air? Where is it? It's. I find it quite interesting because we're supposed to wash our bananas, wash our apples, you know, but we could just do so much. There's only so much we can control. The rest. But if I keep on thinking, in by December they'll kill this. By then come December I don't. Then I said, don't worry, in June they'll do it next year. They can't tell you. Nobody knows about the virus. They don't even know where it is. I mean, as I just told you, there's still hundreds of laboratories trying to treat with SARS, you know. And when HIV and AIDS came around, people were just like died like flies. But the people who indulge in that behavior stop indulging in that behavior because uh, because it was killing people. No, they said, "Oh, well, let's live, let's enjoy life, let's party, let's do this, let's be gay and happy." So you
Now,
know,
now, Dr. Clark, as you say that, they're messaging me to say that we have 2 more minutes left.
okay.
So, what do you want? What do you want the viewing public to take away? What thoughts do you want to leave with them above all else from this program?
Well, I want them to not just think about the situation of COVID-19, of the coronavirus, as something that has psychologically impaled us. And we've been impaled with this virus, and we're stuck. We cannot move. We are trapped. We are psychologically, you know, confined. I want us to begin to free ourselves. I want us to say, okay, um, how do I look at this virus? What is it that I have control over? I have control over the things like following the guidelines. That's all you can do. You can't do anything else. Build my immune system? Yes, I can do that, but I can't do anything else. And to just change the way you think about this situation, and you're going to have these kinds of situations repeated in other areas of your life, where there are other aspects of your life where you don't have control over it. You know, you can try as hard as you will, you just don't, and you need to begin to control what you. Sometimes you have clients that come, and they come and they complain that my husband is like this, and he's like this, and he does this, and that's this. And I say to them, okay, can you control him? No. Can you control yourself? Yes. Okay. All right. So you can control yourself. What do you want to do? You want to stay with him? You have to make your mind up now. You are the one in control of yourself. Can you change the way you feel about it? Is it really that bad that he doesn't put down the toilet seat? That you take up the sun? I mean, what is it so bad about that? If you say he's not going to do it, here are some techniques, right? And they wouldn't have thought about that. So that's where the professional bit comes in. Okay, so, and I said, okay, all right. So you need to get him to understand the sanitary implications of what you are required, how that helps not only you, but it helps him. And how would he like it if you went and did something that he found offensive? And would he like it? I'm sure he would. So he is if he loves you, then he will not do stuff that is going to damage the relationship. But how serious is this thing? Is this something you can live with? Is this something that you can do something about? If you can do something about it, do something about it. If there's nothing that you can do about it, can you live with it? That's the thing. Can you live with it? He's like this. Okay. How long have you been living with him? 20 years. Okay. You've been living with this man for 20 years. He's like this. Why are you fussing about it? Okay. So, so while I'm talking about COVID, it's about the way we think about life situations. And I'm sure you, as well as me, could think of, and I had to do that. I had to do that to enhance my relationship with my children, with my wife, things that I fuss about. I stopped fussing about them and said, okay, what can I do? If I fuss about them, I make the situation worse because when I fuss about them, I have a reaction to my fussing. And then their reaction to me fussing causes another reaction, and we get nowhere. So I say, hey, is this? Do I need to sweat the small stuff? No. Can I think about it differently? Yes. And if I think about it differently, am I going to lose? Is my ego going to be challenged? Am I going to feel that I'm not in control? No. You're still in control. You're still a man of the house. Okay. All right. So give it up. So it's about how we live our lives, how we think about it, and it can be applied in every single aspect of our life, not just in the way we do with COVID-19. And if we can begin to do that, it would make our lives and our family lives much more meaningful and more enjoyable, and our Christian experience will be highly beneficial. Right.
Thank you very, very much, Pastor Paul. I would like to thank the listening public and our viewing public who has stayed with us for this program. The main point, the main takeaway that we've been given is help change our mind, help change the way we think, focus on the good. Before we end, we have another program next week, which will be the 11th in our series that we would like to inform you of. It is being put on by the Men's Ministry Department of the South Caribbean Conference. It is entitled Manhood Realities, Recalculating and Living the Mandate. We hope that everyone will be here next week to join that very important program. Before we go, we'd like to offer a quick Father in heaven. We would like to thank you for making us so wonderful, making us so powerful, making us so much in your image, dear Father, making us with minds that allow us to help put things into perspective, to help make our lives better, to help view the world better, dear Father. Lord, we know that many people stress, they're fighting for their very existence. They're fighting for their place in the world. They're fighting for their future. And they may be depressed. They may be downtrodden. But Father, you have given them hope. You have given them strength, and you have given them a mind to help them rise from the depths that they may be in. Please instill in everyone listening here that will, that hope, that desire to be better and better, to be more and more like you each day, and to recognize that we have a hope. We have this wonderful hope in Jesus Christ, who will come and take away all the pain and suffering in this world. And until that time, we should try as best as we can to create a little heaven right here on earth. Continue to be with us, continue to bless us. Thank you for being our Lord and Savior. And we pray very soon that you will come to take us home. Be with us, we pray in your most holy name. Amen. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week for a program being put on by the Men's Ministries Department, Manhood Realities, Recalculating and Living the Mandate. Thank you.